This is your host, Dorothy Shelton, aka Natural Vita. This is a beautiful message about life after life. It is not in line with the common religious belief that when we die, we either go to heaven or hell, depending on if we've been good or bad, or that eventually our body will be resurrected if we follow a certain religious truth. This is a mature message about the journey of our soul and the unity of all creation. Everybody's journey is different when we cross over to the spirit realm. But ultimately, it is a process of becoming conscious of who we really are and awakening from the dream of earthly life. This beautiful message is by Gareth Gillen. I will leave a link down below if you are interested in reading the full article for yourself. What does the afterlife look like? The main difference between this world and the hereafter is that after death, the outer world is a direct reflection of our inner world. On earth, this is not so obvious. People who are filled with hatred and anger can be surrounded by beauty and abundance, while sensitive and evolved people may be wandering through desolate slums. In the afterlife, our environment reflects the extent to which we are in contact with our inner sun. The more love, truth, and beauty we hold within ourselves, the more radiant and bright our environment is. The inner sun is who we are in our essence. It is the eternal, timeless part of ourselves. At the time of our death, we begin the journey back to that deepest part. To understand what this journey is like, you may envision the earth surrounded by two realms, the astral sphere and the spiritual sphere. These spheres are further divided into many sub-spheres. The spiritual sphere is the sphere of our origin, the domain of our soul. It is a sphere of timelessness, unity, light, beauty, and endless love. Everything that is of higher value in humans finds its origin there. It is the place where our soul dwells. It is our home. We have never truly left that spiritual sphere. We are still there. When we die, we begin what we experience as a journey back to that place. But essentially, it is a process of becoming conscious of who we really are and awakening from the dream of earthly life. This awakening takes time. We cannot just let go of all the illusions and dark feelings about ourselves, about being human, and about the universe that we have accumulated on earth. We have become identified with our earthly personality, and this identification can persist stubbornly. Our illusions and identifications are reflected by the astral atmosphere in which we arrive after our death. The astral sphere. After death, the human being is free to return to the spiritual sphere of one's origin, free to create one's own reality. But that freedom is also a pitfall, because many people have no inner freedom. They have locked themselves inside firm beliefs about how life works, what is good and what is bad, and what will happen after death. And there are others who are not enslaved to beliefs, but to feelings and desires, such as addictions or feelings of anger or inferiority. The majority of human thoughts and fantasies have their origin in fear. All those fear-based thoughts and fantasies create an inner state that, after death, translates into the outward form of the astral sphere. Accordingly, the astral sphere is largely based on fear and falsehood, whereas the spiritual sphere is based on love and truth. But because people do not realize that their thoughts are reflected outwardly in the astral sphere, they believe their thoughts to be true. This is the great pitfall of the astral sphere. People remain firmly convinced of false beliefs because they see those beliefs confirmed around them. The path of the soul. This path is followed by every human being who has experienced clear contact with their soul at certain times during their life. Those are the times when you feel really alive and inspired. You feel joy and a sense of purpose. You know who you are and what you want to do with your life. You feel love for life on earth and your fellow humans, and you know that the universe is essentially good. If you have experienced this at times during your life, this feeling only becomes stronger after death. In the afterlife, a process of growth begins during which you gradually become one with your soul. You experience this as a continuation of becoming more of who you really are. Your earthly fears and anxieties disappear and make space for happiness and insight. While your inner light grows, your environment also becomes more beautiful. You raise up through the spheres until you finally end up in the spiritual sphere, the sphere of the soul that cannot be described with words and cannot be grasped with the human mind. The realm of the astral sphere where your journey begins can be called the summerland. It resembles the beautiful areas of earth, but even much more paradisical. Fortunately, there are more and more people who follow this path. It is the path that is open for everyone who is involved in the development of consciousness, for all those who are willing to grow and learn. This path is for anyone who has not become stuck in rigid beliefs and negative feelings. Actually, it is open for every human being who is still able to have a good laugh at themselves. To find out more about the sub-regions of the astral sphere, read the full article down below. The path of loneliness. Then, there are people who are not saddled with fixed and false ideas, but rather by negative feelings, hate, anger, resentment. They often have caused their fellow humans serious pain and suffering. Someone who has rejected their inner light during life finds themselves in a part of the astral sphere that is dark and lonely, because the light, which brings beauty and harmony, is missing here. People sometimes take on monstrous forms. Still, because everything here is so dark and miserable, redemption is also possible. If you only have monsters and darkness around you, it is clear that something is wrong. The negative emotions that occupied you eventually begin to lose their power. Gradually, the insight comes that all sorts of things that seemed so important during the earthly life, such as power, money, property, and prestige, possesses no light in them. The little light that was there now becomes more obvious. People remember a single beautiful moment from their earthly life. A kind word, a beautiful flower. They begin to re-evaluate those things, and doing this creates an opening. These persons become accessible to guides. The long road back can begin. Often a choice for a new life on earth is made, a life that points the way to more inner light. Punishment and karma. Our thinking about death and what comes after is still frequently determined by concepts such as punishment and karma. In almost all cultures, the idea exists of a higher authority that punishes. If we are bad, we end up in hell, or we have to contend with heavy karma. Generally, those ideas are created by earthly rulers who want to maintain their power and who are against every form of freedom. Often, their doctrine takes this form: we have been placed above you by God, and if you cannot accept that and do not meet our rules, God will punish you with eternal hell. Or something more subtle: we have been virtuous in a previous life, and that is why we are now rich and powerful. You have been bad in your past life, and that is why you are now poor and unhappy. What always works best, at least from the point of view of such a ruler, is to cause fear in people about their natural tendencies. For example, sexuality. The aim is to convince people that they are inherently bad and deserve punishment, of course. People who think they are bad and feel guilty are easy to keep under control by an organization which claims to have a monopoly on the truth. If you can bring people into a state in which they think they are bad, and they believe you are their redeemer, you have power over them. Compared to these ideas, atheism is, from a spiritual point of view, a huge step forward. In the universe, there is no such thing as an authority figure who imposes penalties. Not a punishing God, no lords of karma who send us to a miserable life. But actions do have consequences. When in the winter it freezes and I am outside without a jacket, then I get cold. That is not a punishment, but a result of my action. Every time we hurt a fellow human being during our lives, we push the light of our inner sun a bit further away. That inner sun is not only responsible for our inner light and our feelings of beauty, goodness, and truth. It also connects us with the inner sun of others and with the inner sun of the universe itself. Hurting another is to say no to the inner unity of life. It is saying no to our soul and also saying no to ourselves. The result is a deep loneliness and inner emptiness that is filled with negative feelings. After death, that inner darkness is reflected in the surrounding astral sphere. In the astral realm, the outer reflects the inner very directly. When there is no inner light, there also is no exterior light. To an outsider, it may seem as if persons dwelling there are being punished for their life on earth. But seen from the inside, there is hardly any change. These people felt empty and unhappy on earth, and now they still feel that way. The only difference is that they are now directly confronted with their inner darkness through an external environment that faithfully mirrors it. The way back to the light. The way back to the light comes from the desire for the light. Even a human being enveloped in the deepest darkness is never completely separated from their soul. There are still fragments of memories of beauty and happiness. Gradually, the understanding emerges that violence and power are not the way to discover the light, but rather lead away from it. Love cannot be attained forcefully. All those little memories now form the seed of a growing desire for happiness, love, and beauty. their inner world softens and the person will become accessible to guides. These guides begin to explain to him or her that the way back to the light can be found through compassion, love, and gentleness. However, the further we have wandered away from our inner source, the longer will be the way back. What exactly is that way of return? It is a journey of remembering and rediscovering who we truly are, until all falsehood is let go and replaced by truth. At its core, falsehood means division, the belief that the universe is separated into an infinite number of parts, small egos, all of which are in conflict with one another. Falsehood is the idea of a struggle of all against all, in which the realization of the inner unity behind all things has been lost completely. What is the solution to this division? It is to understand all these egos from the inner level and to start embracing all the parts that we have fought against the hardest. For example, a person who has discriminated against people of a different race will choose to live a life in which they undergo discrimination themselves. In this way, their understanding will evolve. The result is ultimately the realization that all those separated egos are connected. Then the love and the light of the soul starts to flow again. The choice for having certain experiences on earth is taken by the soul. When the awareness of the earthly personality is still far removed from the soul, the choices of the soul will be experienced as a kind of power coming from the outside, God or karma. But karma is ultimately nothing more than the lessons that consciousness needs in order to grow, and these lessons are chosen by the soul itself. All kinds of so-called spiritual teachings that strive to eliminate your karma by burning it up are nonsense. The purpose of karma is to heal and restore the connection with your soul. As soon as you open your inner light to who you really are, your karma ends. The lesson has been learned. I once had a client, a woman, who clung to her relationship that made her very unhappy because she thought this was her karma. But when I attuned to her soul, I felt that the universe, her soul, wanted to teach her that she had to stand up for herself. She thought that she had to undergo her misery patiently, when in reality it was her purpose to stand up for herself. Once she had done that, she had resolved her karma. The purpose of karma is thus never to make us suffer, but to make us grow. Suffering arises only when we resist that growth. If we resist making choices that support our growth and well-being, the misery we experience feels pointless and hopeless, and that is what suffering essentially is. As our consciousness grows, we gradually realize that our resistance to what life offers us is the real problem. Instead of karma, we start to recognize our challenges as our own soul's purpose. We realize that difficult experiences are not there to cause us suffering or to sacrifice ourselves, but rather to make us conscious of who we really are and to restore our sense of the inner connectedness of everything. In the next stage, in which consciousness coincides even more with the soul, everything that happens to you in your life is seen as your own free choice. Your journey back to the light is almost complete.